Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Bird. Historically, political participation has been very important to the United States ever since the establishment of its democracy in the late 18th century. Since then, Americans have been granted many legal rights, including the rights to vote, petition, and assemble. For example, in the 1963 Birmingham protests, exemplified by Martin Luther King Jr.'s The Letter from Birmingham Jail. However, since the introduction and widespread use of social media, political participation has changed, especially among young adults. With that in mind, I asked the question, to what extent has growing access to social media impacted political participation among Americans ages 18 to 35 in the 21st century? And after extensive research, I came to the conclusion that social media helps to increase political participation among young adults by acting as a source of information, a platform for discussion, and a medium for politicians to interact with their youth. For the purpose of this presentation, political participation will be defined as those activities by private citizens that are more or less aimed at influencing the selection of government personnel and or the actions they take. This can come in many forms, including protesting, voting, or actions as simple as influencing the political views of others. Now, social media helps to increase political participation by acting as a source of information. From this graph, as you can tell, the number of young adults ages 18 to 29 who have used social media has increased drastically from 12% in 2005 all the way to over 90% in 2015. This drastic change in social media usage changed the way Americans view their news and information. According to a different study by the Pew Research Center, the number of Twitter users who got their news from Twitter increased among young adults from 55% in 2013 to 67% in 2015. Likewise, the number of Facebook users who got their news from Facebook increased from 60% to 74% in the same time span. As evident from these two graphs, the numbers of Americans using social media to get information is steadily increasing throughout the years. This is especially important for political participation, for the more people know about issues, the more likely they are to care about and take action in regards to those issues. Social media also helps to increase political participation by allowing for a platform for the expression of views. One example of this was the Arab Spring, which occurred in the Middle East and Northern Africa. Dr. Iman Karam Ashmawi, assistant professor at the University of Cairo, studied the effects that social media had on the Arab Spring. From her research, she concluded that social media played a profound role in the Arab Spring by allowing for young Arab adults to express their views, as well as by allowing for the organization of protests, which ended up overthrowing many governments, including those in Yemen, Libya, Tunisia, and Egypt. Although to a much lesser extent of overthrowing governments, social media being used as a platform for the expression of views can also be seen here in America as well. For example, after the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001, Islamophobic sentiment built up upon many Americans. In order to dismiss these preconceived ideas, according to the stimulus source, social media and the movement of ideas, many Muslim Americans turned to social media in order to inform others about their faith and to bring about a positive light upon Islam. As evident, during a time of crisis and division, social media allowed to bring us together by allowing for the expression of views and by facilitating discussion among differing views. Another example of this is with immigrants coming to the United States. According to the academic journal, Internet Use, Group Identity, and Political Participation Among Taiwanese Americans, the study found that Taiwanese immigrants who used American social media were more likely to participate in American political discussion. And finally, social media helps to increase political participation by allowing for politicians to interact with young Americans. For example, in the 2016 presidential election, Republican candidate Donald Trump took advantage of social media in order to connect with Americans. According to The Guardian, the Trump campaign spent most of its digital advertising budget on Facebook ads, testing over 50,000 variants of ads every single day to micro-target voter groups, including young Americans. As I've previously mentioned, the number of social media users has drastically increased since 2005. As a result, it is inevitable that many young Americans were exposed to these types of Facebook ads. Like, for example, these two ads, which call on social media users to donate and contribute to the Trump campaign. Social media has helped to increase political participation among young adults by acting as a source of information, a platform for people to express their views, and as a means for politicians to interact with young Americans. And its implications can already be seen in American politics today. Take, for example, the previously mentioned 2016 election. In it, according to the US Census Bureau, there was a 1.1% increase in voter turnout among young Americans from the previous election. While this may seem like a small number, this adds up to millions of Americans who are now voting for the first time in their lives. Not only this, but the US Census Bureau also found that this was the only age group to see an increase in voter turnout from the previous election, which just goes to show the profound impact that social media has had on the political activity of many young Americans. Although it is true that social media helps to increase political participation among young adults, we must be wary of the limitations that it brings, mainly the spread of misinformation. Take, for example, this image. Upon first look, one might assume that this is an image of a group of high schoolers being disrespectful towards a Native American protester. However, this is only an assumption, and just like this image, social media can be used to hide the truth and cover up the full story. This was as in the case of the American high schooler in this picture, Nick Sandmann, who, according to the ABC News, is now suing the Washington Post for the hasty and libelous remarks against him during this incident. Misinformation, such as in this case, is harmful to democracy and political participation, not only because does it serve the purpose Not only does it serve the purpose of deceiving people, which helps to brew corruption, but it also makes people lose trust in their government and media. So as Americans continue to use social media to politically participate, we must be mindful and wary of the information that we find online. What questions do you have?
First of all, good job pulling through the guy talking right now and 2 bells. So I want that on tape. Good job of pushing through that. First question. What information did you need before you began your research?
Well, when I made my research question, political participation can be defined in many ways. So the first thing I needed to find was a definitive definition of what political participation was, so that I could revolve my research around it, which is where I found my source from the Oxford Research Encyclopedia.
All right, and then explain the level of certainty you have about your conclusion.
Although we've seen a general increase in political participation because of social media, we must still keep in mind that social media is a fairly recent idea and concept, and the use of social media in politics is even newer. So while the trends are there, it isn't exactly certain that social media helps to increase political participation, although the trend is there as of right now.